Just turn down my phone.
All right, good evening. It's 7 o'clock. We'll get going here. I'd like to call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, November 15th, 2021. We'll do, we don't have to
Any
do
roll call
any
vote?
roll
No,
call while
everybody
here.
good?
So I guess we'll stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Guys, you got feedback?
A little bit of feedback. It's great to have everybody in the room tonight. All right, so I will go through our board and committee openings. Fortunately, looks like the list is getting longer, but I know some things are getting filled and some things are opening up here, so. Finance and Advisory Committee has 2 associate openings. Conservation Commission has 2 openings. Hamilton Historic District Commission has 1 opening. Open Space Committee has 2 openings. The Hamilton Planning Board has 1 associate member opening. The Hamilton Affordable Housing Trust has 1 opening. Hamilton Human Rights Commission has 1 opening, which needs to be from the Housing Authority. And Hamilton Development Corporation has 1 opening for treasurer. So a lot is going on all these boards and committees, so it's a good opportunity to get involved and be an important part of our process in town. And so get a hold of Joe or go through our town website to see how you can apply for these boards and committees. Now is the time of our meeting for public comment. I remind people it's for things not already on the agenda, and if you come and introduce yourself in the room, we have 1 person in the room, and then we'll go to the Zoom, and you get 3 minutes. So Duke, do you have anything today?
Duke Seaver, Essex Street, Hamilton. I am inquiring about I want to know if the cane or the town cane that the older people have.
Boston
Someday
Herald.
when I get old, I think I'd like to have it for a while. Thank you.
Good to see you, Duke.
Good to see you.
Where it is? Anybody know where it is?
I don't. The town, I didn't hear.
I didn't know we had one.
We do. What town what?
Yes, we have them.
Well, anyway,
Okay,
I brought it up.
all right.
Research it for you.
Here's
Yeah.
for you.
The town cane? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
for the oldest person who lives in town. They get to use the cane. Oh.
It was developed by the Boston Herald, and they would distribute it out. The Herald distributed them out to towns, to all the towns in Massachusetts, 90 years ago.
Well, that explains it. I've only been around 80 years.
Interesting.
I haven't seen it.
Anyone on the Zoom want to make a public comment?
I'll put Robin, and then I'll jump after her.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. Last time I made a little slideshow about the Boy Scout project, the picnic tables that the prospective Eagle Scout proposed to put in Cutler Park. And I made this little slideshow because you folks are very busy, but it suggested that the Boy Scouts tables would be very much appreciated at Patton Park, and they'd be pretty useless at Cutler Park because nobody goes to Cutler Park, and a lot of people I've asked don't even know that Cutler Park exists. So I wondered if that's anything that you folks, you select board would like to pursue or like me to pursue.
I think that would be a separate project. We'd already approved that project, and it was hard work by the Boy Scout, and we've congratulated him on that. So if somebody else wanted to propose picnic tables at Patton Park, we would look at that application, but it would need to be a different project.
Okay, well, there is already a picnic table at Cutler Park that is covered with lichen. None of us would want to sit on it and use it. So it would just be adding more clutter really to the park. And I wonder if there's much point in it. I know you've approved it, but I wondered if anybody had taken a look at Cutler Park before you approved it.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Unfortunately, we can't debate it tonight, but this is just for you to make comments, so thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mark.
Mark Johnson, 6 Patton Drive, Hamilton. On behalf of the Patton Homestead, Inc., this weekend we hosted the Purple Heart Trail 10K and Fun Run. It was an absolutely fabulous race. We had just under 100 people sign up between the Fun Run for the kids, 1K race, and the 10K that went from the Homestead around Patton Park and back to the Homestead. I want to shout out to Lieutenant James and the police department and their police detail for giving us a safe route, for helping us with the traffic cones. They stopped traffic when we started and stopped the fun run and then started the 10K. We had a safety first policy, and that really helped. DPW also helped us with some traffic cones. Thank you to the town manager, and the Board of Selectmen for helping promote the race. The property was wonderfully showcased. If you have a chance, Jay Burnham posted an online drone video. I think it was on Facebook. That just shows how beautiful the property was and has all the runners at the property as well as running around Patton Park. A quick shout out to Leandra DeFeo and Susan Shelby for organizing it and running it. And for anybody who's curious, at the pattonhomestead.org website, under events and the Purple Heart Trail, we have a gallery of photos there and links to the people who ran. And they were from all over the North Shore and even from Boston. It wasn't just for Hamilton residents as far as running. Anyway, thank you to everybody for a great event. That's all I had.
Thank you, Mark. You had a good day for it, too. All right, anybody else on the Zoom who would like to raise their hand? Joe, you see anybody else?
No.
Okay. We're getting some feedback from, all right.
Can we remind everybody, if you're not speaking, to mute your microphones if you're on Zoom, just so that we don't get any feedback? Thank you.
I will go to Selectmen and Town Manager reports. I'll start real quick. I don't have much, but I'll start quickly. One thing is, and I think everybody else can speak to it because I think we were all there, but we were all invited to the Veterans Breakfast on Thursday morning. A great tradition in town, very well attended. Unfortunately, I couldn't stay very long, so I'd like to hear somebody else comment on the speakers, but our state house was represented. Bruce Tarr was there amongst some of the candidates for the election coming up on the 30th, right? So, so thank you for putting that on, and thank you for including the Board of Selectmen. Also, what's going to be on our next agenda is we've been talking about student liaisons on boards and committees. We're going to start with the Board of Selectmen. So we've asked the high school to bring forth a couple students to go for a position of to be a student liaison to the board, and hopefully other boards and committees in town will follow our lead and get the students involved, as it's a good process to hear from the younger community as well as to get them involved at an early age. So we're going to have that on our agenda next meeting. We have 2 applicants right now who will be here next week to
3 weeks.
I'm sorry, it'll be 3 weeks. We have 5 Mondays. We have 5 Mondays in November, so it's actually 3 weeks. And then obviously there's ongoing discussion on the project, the Chewacca Road project, and I'm forgetting the address right now, Joe, but for the planning board is 133 Essex Street. So there was a meeting last week talking about, it took us kind of a step back to talk about process, to make sure they understood all their approval processes and to make sure that they could cross them off one at a time, and they didn't have to keep going back and opening up older issues. They resolved some of the issues with the housing funds, the affordable housing funds, as well as some of the numbers. So, so I think they'll start the discussions back up in a couple weeks. That's all I have. So we'll start down here, work our way across. So do you have anything, Jamie?
Nothing in particular to report. Nope.
Well, I'd like to also reiterate that it was a lovely, after a 2-year hiatus, the Post 194 on School Street, they had the breakfast, and it was actually pretty good. It was crowded. It was hard to get parking and hard to get seating, but it was very good. And there was another thing. Rosie, help me out. Do you remember?
We can come back if you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you'll remember.
Rosemary?
Well, a couple of things pertaining to Veterans Day. I have a neighbor who didn't know, she's a younger woman and she's a veteran, and she has some things that she deals with the VA. And I thought, geez, I wish that she had been there, because I thought that the speakers were very eloquent, very impactful in terms of the support to veterans. So it turns out that she is doing some outreach work through her company specifically for veterans. And I asked her if she wanted to go see the Post, the American Legion. So we went up there just to sort of say hello. And it was really kind of very poignant, because she met a fellow woman vet who was a very a young woman, and she is new to town. And it turns out that we have sort of the horse world in common. And that was just, I thought, how wonderful that the vets reaching out to vets. I thought that was very nice. So that's just one comment. And then the Master Plan Steering Committee held its forum for the visioning process for citizens. And we had probably between 40 and 50 people turn out. And the two issues that we addressed were, what will we protect? What do you value? And the other question is, what will we grow? What do you want to see more of? So there were tables of 8 to 10 people, and there was a lot of very good conversation. The formal results of that will be analyzed and discussed at our next Master Plan Steering Committee meeting. But everybody had a really, it was a good opportunity to really talk about things that were important to people in town. And then finally, this is just sort of a little bit of a serendipitous turn of events here. The Hamilton Wenham Garden Club sent out an email to its members stating that they have several oak trees that were donated, white oak trees. And so, of course, I quickly responded to that and asked if there would be a few available for placing around town, and they thought that would be possible. So my plan is to reach out to DPW and see where we think that there might be good locations for those trees. So there are probably other things that I'm forgetting, so I apologize if I do, but that's it for me tonight.
Thanks, Rosie. Oh, and I'll add one thing to Rosie's. The master planning session over the weekend is also on YouTube. If you missed it, you can watch it. There's a link on Facebook, and you can also go to YouTube and look up Hamilton Master Plan .org and find it there.
Right.
I just have to add about the CPC. We recently met, but we didn't have a quorum, so we really just kind of had a brief meeting where we talked about some things upcoming but made no decisions. And just in the last few days, I've heard from Stuart Saganor in the state with the CPC. They've raised an unprecedented amount of money this year for CPC through the Registry of Deeds. I think it was $79.5 million, of which Hamilton we raised with our 2% surcharge close to $500,000. Our distribution this year would be 39.4% of that $79 million, or our share of it anyways, which equates to just about $200,000. If you're comparing it to last year's number, it was about $60,000 less last year that we received. So we got a boost in our CPA funding, which is great for our projects that are upcoming, town hall, et cetera.
Good man.
And that's it for me.
So I'll just add one more thing to Sean's addition to the Master Planning Steering Committee. The meeting, I just wanted to add that there indeed is a new website if people are interested. So the website is specifically dedicated to the master plan, and it is masterplan at Hamilton. It's
It's an email address, so people
an,
can,
it's an email address. What did I say?
it's a website, but it's an
I'm
email
sorry,
address, so
yes.
people can send ideas, suggestions, ask questions to that
Right,
email address.
exactly.
It'll be checked regularly, and they'll be able to get answers, and their comments will be included as part of the data collection. So, sorry, I didn't mean.
Not at all. Thank you.
Okay. And Joe, anything for you to update on your town manager report?
Yeah, well, I submitted a bit late to you, but you have my town manager report, and we'll have it online tomorrow. I don't want to, we have a kind of full agenda. I don't want to take up too much time with that tonight. I think that we've got a couple of people that I want to introduce in the next coming parts of the agenda, so if it's okay with you, I'll defer.
Okay. All right. And then we have 3 things on the consent agenda. We have approve the minutes of the October 4th board meeting. We have a approved sign for Nordic Associations at Patton Park Tennis Court. So what that is that's a 4-foot by 8-foot banner that will be up on the tennis court fence. They want to fly it between December 1st and March 15th. And why that is because they're a nonprofit community trail grooming program that brings groomed ski trails to Hamilton and North Shore areas. They want people to know that the trails are open for them during the winter months of December 1st through March 15th. And the last one is the lease authorization. So it was voted in the town meeting, but we have to,
The town meeting voted to approve, as one of the capital items, a purchase of a squad truck for the fire department. The truck it's a lease purchase, it's a 3-year lease purchase, but this truck is a little more expensive than our typical cruiser, so it requires the vote and then a signature of the chairman of the Board of Selectmen for the lease to be official, so.
May I make a motion?
yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Rosemary. And then we can just do all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, nay. So unanimous consent. All right, now we move on to our agenda. And Joe, the order of the agenda is okay? We didn't want to move anything around?
No, it's fine.
Okay, so first on the agenda is to approve the November 30th special general election warrant. So this is our election coming up at the end of the month for the state rep. And that's the only thing on the vote. And so do I need to read anything?
I don't think so. I think we just passed it around, so we
yeah.
signed it, so we should probably
Yeah.
vote on it. So I'll make a
Okay.
motion that we approve the November 30th, 2021 special general election warrant.
Second.
Second from Darcy. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, unanimous consent. All right. So next, Joe, do you want to introduce?
Yep, I would, thanks. So I'm gonna do this so people can see me, and actually, I don't wanna take my camera off. I'm very excited to introduce 2 folks to you tonight, and we'll let them both say hi and if you have any questions for them. Dennis Palazzo, sorry, I didn't mean to add extra syllables there. Dennis Palazzo is our new health director, and Holly Erickson is our new Patent Homestead director. So they're both available on Zoom. Dennis, if you could show your camera, there he is. Dennis, Board of Selectmen Dennis. Holly is right next to him on your screens. They both started last week, Dennis on Monday and Holly on Tuesday.
Hi, Dennis.
Hi, everybody. It's an honor to serve in the town of Hamilton, and I'm very thrilled to bring any talents that I have to the town, and you can all reach me anytime. My contact information will be forwarded.
Great. Well, welcome and thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for joining our town.
Likewise, thank you so much for inviting me to join you this evening. I'm very excited to start at the Patent Homestead, and I just wanted to say if you have any ideas, please reach out to me. Again, my contact will also be forwarded, and I look forward to meeting each of you individually.
Well, we do as well, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you both.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
All right. Next on the agenda is our important annual tax classification hearing with the Board of Assessors. And so you are here tonight, and so, Joe, how are we going to do the presentation?
So Alex is with us to run the short presentation. Steve will make the presentation. You'll take a vote on setting the tax classification, and then
Okay.
you'll take a vote to accept the recommended tax rate for 2022.
6 feet, can I take this?
Yes.
Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you. While you're speaking again.
Thank you for inviting us. I just want to point out that the tax classification hearing is not to set the tax rate. Okay? It is not about that. It is about setting how we're going to tax our municipality. So to that end, keep in mind that in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, there are small towns and big cities, and in some communities, the tax classification hearing is a big deal. Because if you've got a split rate, for example, a big commercial base and a large residential base, deciding upon how you go about splitting the rate, it can be very controversial. So that's the big picture. So I just want to say that because what I want to do is just zip through this. The fact is, at the end of this, we're going to say we're going to have one rate and that's it. Okay?
Right.
But, so this is informational. When it comes to open space, we don't have any open space that qualifies. And what is open space in this category? I'm not really sure. We investigated at length about 10, 15 years ago, and we realized that there's nothing to do there, okay? The residential exemption, as the explanation is there, that comes in handy if you have a community that has a large number of rental properties. So if you live in your rental property, you get a discount. So Brookline, Cambridge, maybe even Boston, I'm not sure. If you have a 4 or 5 family or 3 family, even a 2 family, you live there and you are a member of the community and you live in the house, then you get a discount on your taxes. We don't have a lot of rental properties, so a residential exemption makes no sense for us, okay? I warned you I was going to go. The small commercial exemption, this actually is, it's
So it would only matter if you had a split tax rate.
if we,
If you had a split tax rate. If you had a
Right.
separation with commercial, then you wanted to separate between small business and larger business.
and you don't do this unless you have a large number of commercial properties. Because, you know, as we worked this out, somebody some years ago asked us about this, and we illustrated it by saying, if you took every commercial property in downtown Hamilton and doubled their taxes, doubled. So instead of paying $10,000, they're paying $20,000. The effect on the tax rate would be pennies. The typical homeowner would save a couple of bucks a year because there's just not enough commercial property, okay? So we're not going to do a commercial exemption. So residential factor, it just says we're not going to do these other things. So what we want to have is a residential factor of 1. And so that is what we are asking you to vote on. Now, as far as the protocol for voting on it, that varies. I personally think that you can just say 1, that's it. We're not going to, in years past, sometimes we've had people who wanted to vote individually, say no to this, no to that, no. So you guys do what you want, but that.
How long have we had the, I mean,
Almost-
we've had the factor of 1 for
A long time.
Yeah, it's longer than I can
the
remember.
same reasons you're mentioning, that we've looked at every year, and there's no reason to
Right.
change it. It makes no sense for what our base is, or revenue base
There's
is.
absolutely no reason. Zero.
You'd accrue no benefit to the residential homeowners, and you would.
You would just
create an
punish our
undue
commercial
burden on
businesses.
the very small amount of businesses in town.
So we'll make a motion to ask for further discussion. So who wants to make a motion to recommend a single tax rate,
So moved.
Yep,
It's a
second.
it's a factor of 1.
a factor of 1? Okay. So yeah, so we'll make a motion that Board of Selectmen recommend, favorable recommendation for a single tax rate of a residential factor of 1. So moved,
So moved. He seconded?
Second.
seconded. Any further discussion?
No.
Anybody else on the call have any discussion? Okay, so we're gonna vote as 1 vote. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So unanimous.
Um,
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the annual tax.
Is to accept the tax rate,
Yeah.
Approve the
So-
annual tax rate.
This is informational. It is not set in stone. It's almost kind of like a courtesy. We don't have to provide this information, but Everybody wants to know, it looks like a tax rate of an increase of about 37 cents right now. That can change a little bit. The Department of Revenue still has a little bit of reviewing to do. They might find a big mistake, not likely. Some years ago, a local community did find a big mistake after this was all done and approved, and there was serious gnashing of teeth in the state and in that community. But so that's what we're looking at right now. And again, this underscores we've got $1.705 billion of residential and $54 million of commercial, and so anyway, and I don't know if we want to get into one of the reasons why the tax rate did go up, but I think we should pass on that right now. But so, any questions about this?
So what did the real estate value go up over, what did?
Yeah, well, yes. Now, keep in mind that our residential, this tax information is based upon what the value of property was in Hamilton as of January 1st of 2021.
Right.
Which is based on sales from 2020. So sales that happened this year don't count. They only the prior year. So it's safe to assume right now, given the current climate, that we're going to see more of an increase in property values in next year. And if God willing, I'm still here or we're still here, then we'll probably be having a similar conversation, and it will have increased more. What we did was we raised land value significantly, because in an appreciating market, it is the land that gains in value.
Right.
The house is the
Not
house.
the buildings.
The building's the building. It's the land. Similarly, if values tank, it's the land that's gone down. So we raised land values. Initially, it was like 3 or 4%, and I strongly recommended an 8%, and that's what we ended up going with. And I wouldn't be surprised if we do that again next year. But keep in mind, if you raise the land value 8%, the total value is only going up 4.5 or 5%, because you're not raising the house. However, we also have significant new growth, which also added to our tax base. And new growth has a double blessing in that it gets you can raise your levy limit and so forth. That's way above my pay grade, so I'm not going to go there.
So have we seen the effect of Canterbrook yet on our tax
sorry?
rate or not?
Yeah,
Have we
that's
seen-
exactly what I'm saying.
That's what a big portion
If
of
you
it
look
is.
at our new growth report, it's way more than it's ever been, for two reasons. First off, John Spidell, our assessor who has departed, do a heck of a job of in getting information and adding and going out and making visits and so forth. And that together with the Canterbrook development, that has added a lot of money to the, and to that end, well, again, I will digress and we'll go on forever, and we don't want to do that. So yes, Canterbrook made a big difference. Any other questions, issues, complaints? Yes,
Can you tell us what amount Canterbrook contributed?
I could if I had it in front of me.
Okay.
You know, Jane, do you have that handy?
I can weigh in if you'd like.
Okay.
So, I don't have the Canterbrook specifically, but we did have, so, hi, I'm Alex McGee, the finance director for the town. So, there was a little over $23 million in new growth, which is the new growth that Steve was referring to, and that generated about $406,000 in taxable, in the levy. So, Canterbrook would be a sizable proportion of that. Probably around a little more than 2/3, I would guess, yeah. So they had estimated when they were working on the development around a $300,000 positive tax impact. So that kind of can set the stage a little bit there.
And just so you know, that, as Steve said, this was based on information as of January 1st, 2021, so that's sales from 2020. Not all of Canterbrook sold out in 2020. Several of those properties still sold this year. They're sold out now, so we'll continue to see an increase in new growth next year from the Canterbrook sales.
And those sales prices, they started in the 6s, now they're over $1 million. So, again,
It was a very good market this year. So
it is.
Next year at this time, we'll be having a bigger conversation.
We should
Every
see
in-
tax rates go down next year, is what we should see.
It'd be nice
if
if
we're
it
lucky.
does.
And Steve,
Everything I read, it says that real estate is due for a significant correction. It's just way overvalued right now, but
Wish you told me that before I put
Who
it up for
knows?
an
who knows?
and
That'll be a
Steve,
couple
we're
years.
pretty sure on that, the new tax rate there at 17, was it 88?
Yes.
And then when do we get the kind of the results back from DOR and stuff like that, when they tell us basically that's the rate that we have? Is it,
It's probably within a week.
It'll be the next 2 weeks.
right, I was thinking it's usually like December, end of November-ish kind of, right?
Yeah.
Next week being Thanksgiving, it'll be tough. We're gonna be submitting these, a lot of this has been submitted, the rest will be submitted following the votes tonight.
Right.
The DLS typically takes around a week to review, with next week being Thanksgiving, and everyone is doing this right now, community, so safely it'll be by early December.
Right, that's what I thought.
So we can get the bills printed in time.
Yeah.
Right.
So then we take that information and we print actual tax bills based on it. The first 2 quarters have been.
Estimated, right?
Estimated, right? And so our actual tax rate is coming in, excuse me, sure. Yeah, no problem, sorry. So the actual tax rate, as you see, is gonna be 1788. The estimate that we were working on was 1786. So we're coming in 2 pennies high, but pretty much, very much dead on. So we're looking pretty good there.
And that goes, in terms of our budget season, when we look at the budget and the tax rate, we're very close. Like he said, we're only 2 cents off of what we
Yeah,
estimated.
yeah, right, we're really close to
So this
what
is
we're
all for
projecting.
FY22,
Right.
FY23 budgeting, we're looking at.
Correct, but for what we did for last year, for 22, we assumed it would be 1786.
Right.
Maybe I should have that slide up here too, of what we did, all the hard work we did. 'Cause we did hard work to get here, but. Okay.
One last thing, I neglected to introduce my cohorts. Chris Campbell's member of the board, Jane Dooley, who is running the assessing office, and as I've mentioned to you, she is invaluable. Without her, we would be in big trouble. We would have had to pay Patriot probably twice as much as we did to help us out. So kudos to
Thank you,
Jane.
Jane.
Thank
Yeah,
you
thanks,
so
Jane.
much,
Thank you.
Jane.
I wish we could do more.
Anything else?
No, you have anything
Here's
else? or-
John.
Okay.
My game is now.
Okay, so,
Chapter 91, the
Oh, yeah,
assessors
we
still
have
have the
some
chapter
signing
91.
too, I think.
all right, so Joe, someone has to make it says it's a discussion and vote.
Yeah, I
Are
don't,
we
I
voting?
don't think we need to
you
vote
don't
on
need
it.
a vote, you can
Yeah,
just,
because we're just
We just pass
acknowledging it,
over
we're
that.
not voting on it.
and the next item is also for the assessors.
So next item on the agenda is to adopt limits for 2022 Chapter 91 tax
You wanna change
abatement
the
program.
You want to change the presentation? And then you got the other one.
Are we done?
They're gonna adopt the limits for the Chapter 91 program.
Oh, okay.
You can stop there.
Is there a presentation for that, Joe?
Yeah, Alex, it's one slide. Alex, do you have it, or do you want me to?
I have it,
Okay.
sorry. Sorry, share here.
Sorry, Alex, you can speak to it?
I am not.
Okay.
Jane? Jane, you gonna present on this, you want us to do it?
Loaded question.
So this is your, so you'll remember the town meeting had voted to make some changes to Chapter 91. The special act still has not been approved, the modifications of the special act still have not been approved by the Attorney General's office. So this is the annual vote you'll take to set limits on the Chapter 91 program, which gives some relief from the tax burden to residents in town that meet certain qualifying limits. We'd ask you to, for a motion to accept the limits that you see on the screen. Age as of July 1st, 65 years old for the applicant, or you can increase it to 70. Total household income of $47,520 for a single person, or $71,280 for a married couple.
I move that we approve the Chapter 91 Special Act Senior Exemption for fiscal year 2023 for the age as of July 1st, 65 years old for applicant. Total household income, $47,520 for a single person, or $71,280 for a married couple.
Second.
Further discussion?
No.
So how does this compare to last year's rates? Are they the same? Do they go up, go down?
It's the same as last year.
It's the same, we just haven't had it approved by the AG yet, right? Is that
Yeah,
what
we'll
it
do.
is? So we're just, this is kind of a housekeeping, we gotta just
the-
revote it.
So the income numbers are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and we will remove that clause or increase to 70 years?
Well,
Correct.
You
Yes.
just did that by making.
Right,
a motion.
okay,
Yeah.
right, right,
Action. The
exactly.
motion as made is what will be approved.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion?
No?
Nobody online has any questions, too? Nobody's raising their hand?
I don't see it. Alex, can you take down the, so I can see the whole?
I mean, yeah, it's gonna be online to raise their hand and use the hand to raise function. Okay, so we will do a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Unanimous. Okay, so thank you for coming. I think,
Thank you, Chris, Jane, and Steve.
Thank
Much
you.
appreciated.
Thank you.
thank you for all your hard work.
Stellar work.
And thank you guys for what you're doing.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda is a water abatement for 35 Junction Lane. They'd come before us
Yeah, you got the new, you got
Couple
the new
weeks ago.
agreement in the packets, right?
and they,
Yeah.
Okay.
so what we agreed to do is do a one-time abatement for one leak, but it would happen to be the one leak, one abatement was over 2 bills, but we were fine with it being over 2 bills. So I looked at the bylaw, it doesn't say it has to be one bill, it just has to be one event.
Right.
So we have a new amount, so I just have to open it up so I can,
Homeowner is here again if you want to talk to him, but that's up to you.
well, let's make the motion first, and then we can,
I think, if I'm right, the new amount is 292.36.
No,
No, oops, wrong one.
think it's higher. $369.44.
369.44, right?
all right, so who wants to make a motion?
Move that we approve the abatement request at Junction Lane.
35 Junction.
35 Junction Lane,
Second.
in the amount of,
Oops.
what did I say, $369.44.
Second.
And I just want to make sure that the applicant agrees with the amount.
Yes, thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion?
No?
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, unanimous.
All right,
Moving-
thanks for joining us, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Very welcome.
Thank you
I'll
for
get a
being,
check into Town Hall tomorrow.
Perfect.
thank you. Thank you for being diligent with your repairs.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
All right, so the next item on the list is sort of another grassroots effort to continue, to sort of back a producer responsibility legislation at the state level. So by each town sort of voting to sort of support it, it helps our state house sort of push it further. And so who's going to talk to this tonight?
You have Angelo and Greta Clark are both joining us via Zoom. Also, you'll have in front of you some additional materials that were emailed to me tonight from Ann to share with you for this presentation. Not that one, the other two pieces.
So I'll recognize Ann, please.
Hi, Ann.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak to you tonight about this bill. There are actually several pending bills in the Massachusetts legislature that would really help Hamilton and the other municipalities. But the primary bill is called an Act to Save Recycling Costs in the Commonwealth. And no one calls it by that name. They call it by expanded producer responsibility for paper and packaging. And that's actually quite a mouthful. People call it EPR for paper and packaging for short. And what it really does is if this bill is passed, it would reimburse Hamilton for 100% of its net recycling costs. So I looked at the costs for FY21, and our entire recycling program in FY21 cost the town $281,000. Of that amount, 224 were the collection costs, were the costs for the Casella haulers to drive around, and pick up our recycling, and approximately 57,000 were the processing costs. Now, those processing costs go up and down as the market for our recyclables goes up and down. And in fact, we had some very high numbers a few years ago. Those numbers are coming down rapidly. But at the end of the day, we're always going to have our collection costs. And again, for FY21, that was 224,000. And how would this bill work, or this law work? And how it would work is that large producers of paper and packaging in Massachusetts would be required to pay into a fund in Massachusetts. And the total amount that they pay in would have to be enough to reimburse all the municipalities for their recycling program. And the amount that they pay in would vary depending on how much of this stuff they sent into Massachusetts. And there would also be more or less a penalty factor or a penalty payment if what they were sending our way was not readily recyclable. So if people are sending black plastic our way, they would have to pay more. And they also would have to pay more if what they were sending our way had toxic chemicals in it. The key to this bill also is the definitions of paper and packaging. So paper is fairly simple. It will be any manufacturer of paper that has writing on it. So it's newspapers, magazines, flyers. But packaging is defined very broadly. So it's not just the Amazon packaging, the stuff that you get when you order an Amazon package. But package is defined very broadly as any container that holds something else. So packaging would include coffee cups, milk jugs, yogurt containers, shampoo bottles. Virtually, when you look at your recycling bin, when you put it curbside, almost everything that's in there would fall within the definition of paper or packaging. So basically, we're asking the people that send it our way to actually pay for it to be recycled. Now, this EPR for paper and packaging is not new. It started in Germany 20 years ago. It is in most countries in Europe. 5 of the provinces of Canada have EPR for paper and packaging systems. In the United States, it's just getting started. Maine this past summer passed an EPR for paper and packaging bill. 2 weeks later, it was followed by Oregon. The states of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Connecticut have already come out and say that they will be filing an EPR for a paper and packaging bill the beginning of 2022 when their next legislative session starts. But we have this bill pending now in Massachusetts. It makes a lot of sense. It's logical that the people who are paying for this should be the people that control how much we receive, what it's made out of, and who have control of the design, rather than the way it works now, which is where it just lands on our doorsteps and individuals and municipalities have to pay to recycle it and get rid of it. There's all kinds of EPR bills. There's anything where the producer has to pay to take it back or dispose of it is an EPR bill. So they have EPR bills for tires, a tire take-back program. Some states have EPR for certain kinds of batteries where there's a take-back program. Other bills in Massachusetts is we have an EPR bill for paint recycling. There are 10 states in the country that currently have paint recycling. What happens is people pay about $1 more when they buy paint. And then when they finish with the paint, even if it's a full can of paint, they take it and they can drop it off at a collection point. And that paint is recycled. Latex paint, I don't know how they're currently doing it, but they actually take the color out of the latex paint and they make it into new paint. So Massachusetts currently has pending, in addition to the paper and packaging bill, it has one for paint, it has one for mattresses, and it has one for electronics. The Massachusetts Municipal Association has already come out in support of all these bills. They're supported by the environmental organizations who are looking for a way to reduce the volume of some of these things. And what I would like the board to do tonight, if it sees fit, is to take a board vote supporting these bills. And if it takes that board vote, to subsequently have the board or Joe on behalf of the board, send a letter to our local legislators, Senator Tarr or whomever then fills Brad Hill's slot, to ask them to support these bills and to take whatever actions they can to move these forward and pass these into law. It really would be a game changer in terms of how recycling is handled in the Commonwealth. And with that, I open it up for your questions.
So, well, yes, I had a couple questions. Anybody else want to talk on your committee, or Ann, or?
How quickly, and do you think we could get this up and running?
Well, I know that in Maine, they were anticipating it would take 2 years to get the program up and going. So they passed the bill this summer. Then they need to enact regulations. Their local DEP needs to enact regulations. They need to create the organizations. They need to create the fund that the producers would pay into. So they think that it will be up and going in 2 years.
Okay.
I would anticipate Massachusetts would be similar.
Yep, thank you.
So I mean, so although while I support the theory behind it, I think it's, we all get boxes and boxes and boxes, and it makes no sense. How doesn't the cost just get passed to the consumer at some point? Doesn't it make the goods more expensive if the?
Well, in Maine, that was the major criticism that some people were making of their program. And they actually took a look at, in Canada, how costs were spread out over these various products. And what they came up with is, for example, a yogurt container. It was something like 1/10 of 1 cent would be the additional cost per item. So they're really very small amounts that are passed on to consumers. And at the end of the day, the consumer has to pay for it one way or the other. But it would really give the large producers an incentive to lower their costs. They can do it by producing less of the stuff or by making it more readily recyclable. So I think the thought is that not all these costs will just automatically be passed on to consumers.
Right, and I would suppose the cost, if it was passed on to consumers, would be, I mean, we're initially basically getting repaid for that recycling, right? $280,000 a year or whatever, that would offset that initial rise in the price in theory, I guess.
That's right. People would get it back because they wouldn't be paying that amount out. So
right.
It's a little bit circular. People will be paying for it one way or the other, but EPR is a much more logical way for it to be paid for, rather than having a municipality have to pay for something. They've got no control over these items, over the design of them, how much of them come. There's no logic to having a municipality pay for recycling, other than it's perhaps more convenient. But
what state is Massachusetts modeling their legislation after? Is there a state that is going to be similar to it that's done it for a while, that the data from that state would be available to look at?
There are no programs currently active in the United States. I think the closest would be the ones in Canada.
Canada, okay. And then I had one more question, was in terms of what if it's something that's what if you're a producer of something fragile, glass or liquid or something? I mean, and you have to have a lot of packaging because it's is there exemptions to this, or is everyone penalized on the sort of an even? I mean, it's one thing if you're shipping, cotton balls and you got too much packaging because they're not going to break. But what if you're shipping something fragile and you have to have a lot of packaging? Do you get penalized for that?
No, I'd say you pay your fair share because it needs to be recycled or disposed of in some fashion. So you'd pay your fair share. I don't think you'd be penalized as long as it was something that could be recycled or composted.
I just want to jump in too and say this is an opportunity for innovation. If the manufacturers and producers understand that they can reduce their costs, they may have to change their business models in certain instances, but those are all good things.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen innovation. We've seen the sort of the inflatable, air pockets instead of having all the sort of the
starch peanuts
and stuff. So we definitely see innovation.
Innovation from this.
So but I just want to make sure it makes, it's not just a hidden tax, right? It's sort of I think it's the right idea. I like the theory behind it. I'm just trying to think of how the cascading effect of it is.
And Ann, you had mentioned in the reading, Maine and Oregon have adopted this and have passed it in their legislation. Now, you're saying it's about 2 years till they get some headway with the program. Have you seen or heard about pushback from companies? Like, what if a company importing goods into Maine just says, we're not going to pay into the fund? Do they not able to sell in Maine? Is that how it works?
Then they're not able to sell in Maine.
Okay.
And, okay, so just a process. So what you're asking us to do is to vote as a board to sign the letter that's written here, and we can read the letter and decide if we want to change it or whatnot. Is this a letter that you wrote, or is this sort of the letter that is coming from the group that supports this?
Well, the first thing is for the board to take a vote. And this draft board vote was actually put together by several of the environmental organizations working together. I think Mass Recycle originally drafted it. Then there was some input from Conservation Law Foundation and other environmental organizations. It was very, very long. I shortened it up.
Okay.
So, but this is a form vote that is being given to other municipalities as well. I think the feeling is that if municipalities don't really stand up and support this bill, it may not get passed. The municipalities are really the ones that stand to benefit from this bill.
May I make a motion?
Well,
We can discuss that.
we can make a motion and we can discuss it.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the extended producer responsibility legislation.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, so further discussion. So, well, I mean, as a board, we tried to vote the same night that we introduce something, even though it's a policy, it's still something that we're, as a town is gonna, so my recommendation is that we sort of do our own research over the next 2 to 3 weeks, then vote on it next time would be my recommendation. I think it's a great idea. I'm in favor of grassroots. I just want to do my homework before I vote on it.
Ann, do you know of other towns that have voted to support it?
I don't know who has taken an official board vote. I do know that the city of Cambridge and the city of Boston have written letters of support for this bill. And as I said, the Massachusetts Municipal Association, on behalf of all municipalities in Massachusetts, has written a letter of support as well. I can clearly send you those 3 letters. I have copies, Boston, Cambridge, and the Mass Municipal Association, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to read. Thank you.
So, Sean, your thoughts on the actual legislation and whether we should vote or not tonight, or table it to the 6th?
I haven't had a chance to read through the full letter yet, but the resolution in support, it seems fine to me. I guess my only follow-up question, Ann, is this bill number S610 in the Senate H878, do you know where they are right now within the House and the Senate?
Yes, they're in a joint committee. They're before the committee, they call it ENRA, Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture. There was a hearing on them during the summer, so it's in committee now. I think the notion is that people really want to push it out of committee so that it can get to a Ways and Means. But it's before a joint committee right now. I think there's plenty of time for the board to take a couple weeks to consider it before they actually take a vote. There's no need for the vote to be taken tonight.
Yeah, I think our support would help probably get it out of committee a little quicker. Support from many municipalities would, but yeah, I think I'm fine with it. I just want to read it over a little bit more since I just kind of got it tonight. But I'm fine with bringing this back at our next meeting and putting it on the next agenda for approval.
Rosemary?
I agree. I actually would be fine either way. I support it wholeheartedly. I think this is not a new concept. I know that it's been something that I have been aware of for some years, so I would be ready to vote, but I certainly respect that the board would want to have more time.
Darcy, I know you made the motion, but go ahead.
I support this wholeheartedly, and I can't wait.
So I guess maybe I mean, I commented that maybe we can take it up next time, but
Yeah.
if we can, if we want to take a straw poll tonight or vote on it
Do a
tonight,
straw poll, and that way we're not,
If it's a straw poll, I mean,
Wrong
I mean, I
straw-
guess we could actually vote on it, not really a straw poll, but if enough people are in support of it. And has everybody read through the letter and everything? I'm kind of on the last paragraph of it, so if you just want to pause for a second, I can read it. And
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
It only takes one member to ask to table something the first time you see it, so if you
Okay.
want to table,
All
you
right.
can do it.
I'd prefer to table it to the 6th.
Okay.
That's fine,
Okay.
yeah.
And Jamie, okay, your comments?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of it.
I think we'll put it on the agenda for the 6th, and I'll feel better that we vote on it then. But I welcome the discussion. Probably a couple more questions will come up, and I'll reach out to you if I have any further questions. And if you can distribute those letters to Joe, the examples you have might be helpful.
Right. And these numbers on the kind of the proclamation, are these straight from the horse's mouth, kind of, these budgetary numbers?
Those are ones that I took from the Casella contract and from the Casella bills.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Great. Good
Thank you, Ann,
stuff.
for presenting this.
Anybody else in the on Zoom have any comments or questions before we move on this support of producer responsibility legislation? Okay. Next thing on the agenda is the Community Electricity Aggregation Program. And we're getting an update from Good Energy, and we have a PowerPoint presentation.
John O'Rourke is here.
John O'Rourke is here, so I will
John?
recognize John, and who's sharing their screen?
I'm going to try to do that right now.
Joe's going to share his screen.
Oh, you can get it? Okay, great.
Okay.
I'll let Alex, thank you, Alex. The date on the presentation is when Mr. O'Rourke shared this with me, so
Okay.
I know it doesn't reflect tonight's date. Sorry about that.
All right, so, John, do you want to take it over from here?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the board for allowing me to come before you tonight. As Joe mentioned, I had met with him on October the 21st and presented this update to him. I wanted to do it directly with the board so that if there were any questions, I could answer those questions. Joe, we can go to the next. Essentially, your enrollments in the program as of the launch date in January 2019, about 2,562. And as of August 21st, there were 2,200 and old. Your maximum was, again, as of the January 19th launch date. Your minimum was as of June 2020 of 1917. You can see by the graph of accounts billed that essentially it's pretty steady. You're going to have your ups and downs depending upon new accounts that come into the town, others that move out, people that go and get a third-party supplier other than the aggregation. So you're going to see this slight shift in numbers over time. The savings, the cumulative savings on the program have been minimal at $173,302. Although in this next adjustment for National Grid, you're going to see a big bump in this number. Joe, could we go to the next one? This graph basically shows how the program has compared with the National Grid rate. Initially, at the launch, we were below that rate. National Grid has performed very well on the last two summer adjustments, so they were well below the rate. The winter rates have all been above the aggregation rate, and that final blue segment on the right side, the last adjustment has come at 14,821. We thought that that adjustment would be high. We didn't realize it would be this high. So you're going to see a tremendous lift in those savings number over this next adjustment period. And essentially, because this adjustment period is too high, the summer adjustment period for 2022 may very well be above the aggregation rate. So we're going to look at that closely. One of the reasons for this last adjustment that's so high is because natural gas prices over the last 6 months have almost doubled. Again, that's because of national energy policy. And it looks like that may not end soon. So as I say, we could have a very high adjustment for that summer 2022 National Grid rate as well. Joe, if you could, okay. Here's a just a comparison on a rate basis. The National Grid rate of 14,821 that started on November 1st. As soon as people get that, anybody who's not in the aggregation, when they get that December bill at that 14,821, you're going to find more people interested in coming into the aggregation. And they can always go to the HamiltonCCA.com website, find an enrollment form there, and join the aggregation. Don't forget also that the 11,206 rate has an additional 5% green energy in it, which again is more advantageous for our renewables and for helping us get toward a situation where we're using less fossil fuels. Again, at this adjustment, added a 50% green for those people that wanted to be more than the 5%, but less than 100%. So you have a section in there for people who want that 50% green, and that's at the 12,713 rate. And again, below the National Grid rate on this last adjustment. Even your 100% green rate is below the National Grid adjustment, which is good. That basic rate of 0% has the same amount of renewable electricity as is required by the state, which this year is 18%. Okay, so that's apples to apples with the National Grid basic service, same amount of renewable electricity. Joe, if we could go to the next slide. The enrollments over time have remained somewhat stable. They're within a very tight range, which indicates an overall acceptance of the program, which is good. We're not seeing a lot of in and out in the program, which is very good. Cumulative savings continue to show a favorable trend. All those savings cannot be guaranteed. And you'll notice on the bottom of every page, we have a disclaimer that says savings cannot be guaranteed because future National Grid basic service rates are known. We're required to say that by the Department of Public Utilities because obviously we can't project into the future. But certainly so far the program has been successful. Excuse me. And essentially what people are looking for more recently is the stability of rates over a longer period of time, especially for those seniors and those on fixed incomes who want to see that more steady than that up and down of the utility rates. So that has become a big attraction for the aggregation in the last few years. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
So just walk us through, a resident of town wants to join this, the best way to join the aggregation program is to go to Hamilton.
The best way to join the program is just to go to the website. You'll see it on each of these pages. It's HamiltonCCA.com. And there's a menu item on the website that says enroll. They just go to the enrollment form, they fill it out, and normally they get switched over on the next meter read from National Grid.
Yeah, what if you forget where you're enrolled and you want to go check how you're enrolled? How do you do that? The same way? Or can you look on your bill?
You'll see it on your bill. You can just compare the rates to the rates on the website to find out which program you're in. And certainly, at any time, you can switch among the options in the program. Again, all you need to do is there's an enrollment form as well as a change form that will allow you to switch among the options in the program.
Any other questions?
Is there anything different or special about people that have solar panels or in some sort of program?
Well, essentially, anybody who has a net metering agreement with National Grid, that's separate and apart from the aggregation. They can join the aggregation, and anything that they use coming from the grid would be obviously priced at the program rate. But most of the time, a lot of the people who have solar panels are covering a major part of their electricity with those solar panels. But again, they can join the aggregation if they want. It doesn't affect their net metering agreement.
Mr. Chairman, there's a question from the audience.
Can you read it, Joe? Sorry.
Yeah. John, we have a question from the audience. Do we proactively target new homeowners with material on this energy option?
What we do every 4 to 5 months, we will get the new accounts that come into the community from National Grid. They will be sent a letter about the program, and at that point, they have the opportunity to join.
If we have more, I'm trying to think of if it's a linear thing. If there are more residents enrolled, does it directly impact the rate? Does the rate go down?
Well, this program, these rates are fixed through the end of the program, which is essentially the end of
2023.
2023.
Yeah.
Okay. These rates are fixed through that period.
And then we'd rebid them prior to that.
And
Essentially, what would happen is we start looking in this probably the spring of 2023 for an advantageous time to bid. And when our analysts tell us it's a good time to go out, we'll basically start a renewal process.
And John, kind of 2 follow-ups on that. I remember when we were first putting the community aggregation program together, we had gone in with Gloucester and I think another community. We'd probably do that same thing again, you would imagine, when we get to the end of our aggregation program? Or it all depends on the market and...
It will depend on the market at the time. But
Right.
we can, we'll talk about that decision when the time comes.
Right. And then kind of the other thing was, you had mentioned we were up around, I think it was 2,500 folks, and at one point we were down to about 1,900. And refresh my memory, is there a minimum enrollment amount that we need to carry, or could we go down to like one person in the program and still have it programmed?
You could essentially go down to one person in the program, the rate stays the same.
For
There's
those
no-
enrolled in the program.
Right,
There's
for those
no
enrolled in it.
minimum amount that you would need in the
And
program.
just, if I could, John, you had drifted at one point down to 1,917, but
Yeah.
it's back up closer to, it's over
Right.
2,300 now, so
Right.
you're
We're
still
back
over-
up to the original number almost that
Getting
we
close,
had.
yeah, getting close back to the original number, so.
And I would imagine people will, once this rate goes up again, people will opt back into it.
That's correct. You'll see these minor fluctuations in the program. People, again, when the rate goes down, some people will opt to come out of the program and go to National Grid. Then they'll come back into the program if they want. But again, you'll see these slight adjustments, these slight variations in the program. Most people will just stay in the program because they understand over the length of the program they're saving. They have the potential to save money, although savings are not guaranteed.
Right. That's all I had.
Anybody else? Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the board. And thank you, Town Manager Dramelowitz. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks,
Have
John.
a good night.
Thank you,
Good seeing you.
It's interesting to see the winter months, the delta on the rate, and that this is a constant, so you gotta weigh it out. All right, our next item on the agenda is our Hamilton Special Liquor License Policy discussion, and I think we'll have a final vote tonight. So Rosemary's worked hard over the last couple weeks to get this thing right. So I don't know if Rose, you want to start with that, and then we can vote on it. But I've read it. I'm fine with it.
Can
And
I,
Joe, sorry, go ahead.
after Rosie's done talking, if I could offer one tiny amendment?
Okay.
But up to you folks.
So we talked about last time that on public property, for the safety of individuals and for the protection of the town, that we should demand that people have a 12C bartender/caterer license. And so we looked at that last time, and then what I did was really think about on private property. How can you? Okay, oh, I'm sorry, of course. Okay, so, okay, so, let's see. Okay, sorry, let me just get my
Take your time.
bearings here. This, I think, was the, this is not the one that I had, the final submission. The one that I sent to you a week ago had the document that included the serving of liquor on non-town-owned property.
I thought that was in this one.
I thought if
It is in there.
That was like the second section. Yeah, 11-7 you sent. Let me just open it up.
That's all I have.
Okay, yeah.
11-7, you said?
Yeah.
Did you send it to everybody, Rosie?
I
or
sent
just-
it to
different format,
Bill
Joe, so
for
it's hard
for
to tell 'cause
his
one sort of-
comments. I
Yeah,
sent it
Bill.
a week ago,
I
so.
thought what I did was take,
Oh, you know what, Rose, you just sent it to me.
I did, for your
had the wrong one.
comments last,
I apologize.
a
I just
week
went to, I
ago.
thought Joe was copying on it too, so when I
Okay.
responded, Joe didn't get the.
hold on, is this it
copy.
here?
I'll forward it to you now, Joe, so maybe we're not voting on it tonight.
Let me see,
And,
okay.
if you could forward it to me now, I hate to delay the vote again, but I would just add that I tried to send this to Tom because you had asked him to make sure that
Yep.
any changes didn't, put us in jeopardy. There have been so many iterations of this that he noticed that an indemnification and release clause that he had suggested
Mhm.
was left out of the more recent one, and I think, sir, it was just an oversight,
I
so
agree.
I wanted to just add that back in.
Okay,
So if-
absolutely.
Well, I think we had pause. I thought I had just been blind copying everybody else. I didn't realize you didn't just copy, so my fault.
So
I'll
if
make
you-
sure in the future you copy,
If you
but,
could s- if you could send it to me.
Yep, I just
I'll,
did.
Okay, and then if it's,
But so Rosemary rewrote the thing. She put, it's a one, not a one pager, but a one document for both private and public and
Correct.
events
That's-
on everything, so it makes
Okay.
sense, and it
Right.
takes into account all the A,
That was
B,
my
C.
understanding of what you had asked
That's
me
correct, yeah.
to do, so,
Has
That
all the
makes
A,
sense,
B,
because
C
when I looked at
requirements.
this in the packet tonight, I thought, oh, this looks the same.
right.
Let's table it, yeah.
sorry,
It's okay. I should have asked.
I don't think we need to make a motion, but we'll just table it.
Okay.
But I guess I don't think there's any further discussion we need to have. I think it needs to get, you guys need to read it,
Yep.
and then we add that indemnification. and,
I have this now. Tomorrow morning, I'll add the indemnification and release clause, and then send it right back out to all five of you for. and
Okay.
it'll
Yeah,
be-
okay.
All right, well, thank you, Rose. Mary, sorry I didn't get it to
So-
everybody.
But Tom hasn't actually
Didn't see the
looked
final,
at
no,
this
he has not.
latest one, right?
This one,
Correct,
Not-
yeah.
not-
he probably has not.
No, it's very similar language, just sort of formatted differently. It's just,
So
I
do-
think it's
do
easier to
you-
read.
Do we want to, instead of sending it to all of us tomorrow morning, do you want to send it to Tom for one last look and then send it to us?
Yep, send it to Tom, have him add the identification.
Let's do that so we don't have another version of it.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's have
Yeah.
council look at it and then
right.
distribute.
And the good news is we have 3 weeks.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. All right, we'll table that one, and then next
Rosie.
is the memorandum of agreement for land near Patton Homestead, review land management plan and possible vote. So, Joe, we put this on the agenda.
Yeah,
We weren't
so-
sure if it was gonna actually make it.
So Friday, after the packets were emailed out, I did get a land management plan draft from George Tarn, and I know that George and Virginia are both on the call here tonight. I did have, I do not believe, and George can answer the question for us, but I do not believe the Conservation Commission has had a chance to review this and vote on it. And I did have a couple of small questions that, as I was going through today, I made some pen and ink notes to myself in the margins. So I would ask that we, normally the board should act last and not first on this type of agreement anyway. So I think it would be worth having a discussion with George and Virginia, maybe taking some input from the public if there is any. And then I could get my notes to George and Virginia and the Conservation Commission, have them act, and then bring this back after they've acted.
So they issued an MOA map.
And a draft LM.
And they issued
Draft LM.
they issued a 7-page
LMA?
LMP, sorry.
LMP.
Okay.
So, Joe, what's the thing is the best way to, so George wants to walk us through, I just don't know if we want to walk through 7 pages, so I'm trying to limit this thing to a reasonable discussion, because we just got it on Friday, obviously, so I don't want him to go through every line item until we have a chance to read it ourselves, but I want him to present it, so should we limit what's a reasonable time limit to have George speak for? You think, Rosemary?
Yeah.
How much time do you want to give us tonight for him to go through?
Sure. I don't know what's remaining on the agenda. I did talk with George about this. I also spoke with Lauren Lynch, the chair of the Concom. George, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I would like to speak to it. It'd be
If
great.
you haven't had time to read it, I'm not sure what I can say about it. It's,
If you can walk us
we
through the outline of it and what sort of the outline, the bullet points, and what you'd like us to focus on when we review it ourselves, that might help us guide our review and put us in the right plan.
well, the original intent that we had a couple years ago when Virginia and I started on this was to write a general land management plan that would cover all of the lands that have come under our control, more or less. And that's the way I wrote this one. The other way to do it would have been to separate out everything that's specific to the Patton homestead that we wanted to gain some control over from the Conservancy, which we already have control over. I decided to go with the former and mix it all together because some of it just doesn't seem to make sense to me to separate out. Like the loop trail, for example, is half on the Conservancy and half on the what Brian has called the homestead land management area. Some of the things like the canoe launch are very specific to the land management area. Other things like the reforestation are almost entirely on the Conservancy. But despite that, I put it all together as one thing. I think if you want to concentrate on the items that are most, well, I wouldn't say contentious, but have most debate, I guess, associated with it, there would be the canoe launch and the loop trail. The rest of it, I think, is pretty straightforward. We talked about, I think, most of these items before when the last time the memorandum of agreement came up. I don't know what I need to add to that. I think you all saw the MOA last time and had a chance to look at it. So I think the only thing you need to look at now to be sure it's okay with you is the land management plan. As I say, if you haven't had enough time to actually review it, we'll just have to wait until you do.
Talk to me about the Land Management Committee and how that, yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's new. Is this new
it's
committee?
again, it's intended as a general purpose is not specifically for the homestead land management area, but for the entire thing. It seemed pretty clear that we need a committee, an ongoing committee of some sort to oversee this management and make adjustments and changes and deal with any questions or input from other people that arise. So, I mean, the obvious thing is to create a land management committee out of the conservation concern here, but there's some debate about how many members and how it's going to be, whether we're going to have one meeting per year and all that sort of thing, but that's all detail. I think the only thing that's really important is that the Land Management Committee will oversee the land management plan and communicate with the select board and the town manager according to anything that comes up, and also on a regular basis. At least a report every year, and of course we will report to the Conservation Commission as well.
So George, if I could add something in here, when I was communicating with Lauren Lynch, the chair of the Concom, and this was just today, George, just this afternoon, so just not a chance to discuss it with you yet. But one of the concerns that she had about having the subcommittee of the Land Management Committee, if it's 3 members of the Concom, that would constitute a quorum. So that might be a problem, since at present there are only 5 members of the Concom. So that might be a problem. Certainly she anticipates more members for the Concom. In fact, at the master plan visioning sessions, she told me that a few people had expressed interest, but I want to bring out the reality that it might not be possible to have a subcommittee of the Concom.
I don't really see why not. I guess we would have to look into the rules for that. As far as I could see, the committee is separate from the Concom. It's the same as the Open Space Committee originally was constituted the same way. And the rules apply to that committee and not to the Concom. So a quorum would be 2 out of 3 for the Management Committee. It has nothing to do with the quorum for the Conservation Commission. Yeah, sure, we would like to have 2 more members, and there are some possibilities, but I think that's irrelevant.
Well,
unless somebody has some different view of the rules on that.
did you say 2 members, George, now, or the 3 members? Is that what you're?
I think he's saying 3 and a 2-person quorum.
Well, in the Concom, if these are, this is Lauren's concern. She may or may not. I mean, I think it depends on what you are discussing. But at any rate, 3 members would be a quorum of a 5-member Concom. So I'm not sure that would pose a problem. But it's just something that she brought up. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
I read her comments on the land management plan, and I considered what she had said about the quorum business, and it just seems to me that the 2 things are separate. It doesn't really matter what the quorum number happens to be at the time for the Conservation Commission. The Land Management Committee, which is, call it a committee or a subcommittee, you don't, either one, the rules apply separately. A separate group, it doesn't, I don't know, I don't see how it necessarily affects the quorum considerations for the Conservation Commission.
No, I see what you're saying, George, but the optics are a little bit difficult, I think.
But I think we could, check with town council for, it's just a quick question, George, and it may not be an issue at all, but only because Lauren mentioned it. So I thought I would just bring it to the forefront.
Yeah, it's hard to have a subcommittee of a committee, because then all of a sudden you're reducing your vote
Right,
requirement
I
from
just,
3 to 2.
right, I put myself
Right.
in, I put
Right.
this land management committee in the, like a board of selectmen role,
Also,
right?
we have like a
So if we had a 3-person
board.
committee,
It's a
the
quorum.
optics of it, like I said,
Yeah,
would
just
be
looks
difficult
bad.
for, even if we weren't talking board of selectmen issues, the
Right.
optics of it for outsiders looking at it,
Like also 2 people have to vote for something
And-
that's approved.
right.
And there's 5 people on the board, and only 2 people have to approve
Right.
something.
It makes it difficult.
I think there is, I
There's
think
a
there's a
conflict
danger there.
Yeah.
I think so too.
But interesting idea. I think maybe it's a way to tweak it. But those were my comment was the committee didn't seem to make sense. I want to make sure Patton and Concom review this. So because now we have a new
Virginia
Patton.
would like to be recognized.
Yeah, and then funding. I would love to have a suggestion for a funding source. I mean, I know we need funding, but I'd like to know where that. I mean, we all know it needs funding, but where's it coming from? Number 4 was my only personal thing was just from the tours out there was the pond. You know, you can't see the pond from the homestead, and you used to be able to. And so what's restoration, what's appropriate, what's protecting greenlands and wetlands. But I know that there's an area of a sort of a wetland garden, but I still think you should be able to see the pond. So we need to figure out a way to open the pond up.
The viewscape.
For viewscape and for access. And then, and also we haven't really visited this again since we've talked about crossing the road, and we have to go back and look at the conditions from the,
I think the
from that
plan,
agreement. And I think it should be in there, but I've never opened back that up again, look at the conditions for crossing the road.
yeah, I think that, right, that's something that's not part of this, but will be
In
negotiated.
here, though.
Well, to discuss it with them, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is the ideal management plan, and to broach that subject with the Patton Homestead, the HOA, that is a separate issue because that involves amending an easement.
But I think it's, I mean, there was a lot that went into this 7-page document.
Yes.
I appreciate all the hard
You sort
work.
of summarized all your issues. I think it's good because it lets us really see into what the issues are and what we need to address. But I know Virginia wants to speak, but we can go around the room first and let Virginia speak, or anybody else want to go before Virginia goes?
I'd like to hear Virginia.
All right, Virginia.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I wasn't sure whether mute being on or whether it says it's off. I can't tell sometimes. Okay. Judge, you mentioned that we discussed having a plan that's in general that would apply to any and all land put under the management of the Conservation Commission now and into the future. And I realize that what you folks are asking for because of the MOA is you really want a plan that's specifically to the site. I believe George has responded to that. What I responded to was a general plan that wouldn't be specific to any one site, though it's generally in all sites, okay? And I had noticed that George had written quite a nice description relevant to this specific site. What I was hoping we might do is to have a general plan with either a separate section or an appendix, whatever, specifically for each site, so that whatever's in the general plan would be there for everyone. And then anything specific for a particular parcel would have additional specific information and directives in their own section. Because I think that's, unless this is the only land that's gonna be put in our control, we're gonna end up having to write another whole plan, even though a lot of it will be repetitious, but we have another plan for every single piece of property. I don't see that as being productive. So I also have a plan, but a lot of it is in plan, of course, that George made out. We put them together. So that's what I wanted to say, because I think that the plan isn't finished. It's a draft, really, it's the very first draft. We always welcome comments, but even we have more questions that we're trying to answer ourselves for the plan. So I think we might be getting ahead of ourselves, even though I know we all want to get it done. I do, but I think this takes a little more time. But thank you.
No, thank you, Virginia. No, like I said, I think this is a great document because it really, we've talked about this for a long time, but you put a lot of work into this, so thank you for putting it all into one place. And I think, yeah, we will, we're not going to rush it, obviously, but we're going to take our time and go through it, but we're not going to put it off. I think we should go through it and item by item, and so I think it's a good start. And thank you, George, for introducing it to us, and I think we'll have an agenda once Concom and Patton Homestead get a chance to review it.
Yeah, I thought Lauren had mentioned that it should be on their agenda for next week for their vote.
And I'll make sure we get a comment from Town Council regarding the subcommittee idea. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Anybody else have any comments before we move on, either in the room or online?
Not for me.
All right.
Virginia, you raising your hand again?
I did raise my hand again.
Yeah, go ahead, Virginia.
Baby.
Just one question for Joe is, when would you like to talk to George and I about this?
Would you be around on Thursday? Would you be available to meet maybe on Thursday at some point?
Yes, I would, but I don't know about George.
I believe so, yes.
All right, if you don't mind, I'll send you a couple times on Thursday from my calendar tomorrow morning when I get in, and you can respond to the one that works best for your schedule.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I sent this, the liquor policy, I sent it.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the ARPA presentation. So we talked about this a couple weeks ago, and we're looking forward to your presentation tonight, so.
Thank you.
Alex, you're going to
Sure. Yep.
recognize Alex?
All right, thank you. So Joe and I are going to give a presentation on ARPA and how it's sort of the program and then what we're looking at locally here. So we'll just jump right in. So ARPA is the acronym for the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. It's a congressional bill that provides funding for a number of different on a number of different fronts. And sort of one corner of that really impacts us here is state and local aid. And that totals, the entire bill is $1.9 trillion, so it's a massive stimulus bill. There's additionally $350 billion in aid for state and local government, so that is sort of the section that we're going to be working off of. $8.7 billion was provided to Massachusetts. So $5.3 billion is going directly to the state, and then $3.4 billion is being divided among counties and municipalities based on sort of a formula where they've divided that up. So Hamilton stands to receive approximately $2.4 million in funding, and that consists of our direct municipal allocation, and then they've done a county allocation because we don't really have strong county government here. A lot of states still operate with county governments. Funding must be obligated to be spent by the end of 2024, and then actually be spent by 2026. We will likely have ways of spending this long before then. And then we will be receiving the funding in 2 equal tranches. We've already received the first one in spring of this year, which was, I believe, just over $1 million, and then the remainder will come in spring of 2022. So with the funding comes sort of categories that we are allowed to spend it on. So first and foremost, to continue the response to the ongoing pandemic. So expenses related to addressing COVID-19, challenges with that. address the negative economic impacts to individuals and businesses caused by the pandemic, replacing lost public sector revenue. There's a very specific formula that is given for this, and you take the prior 3 fiscal years prior to the pandemic sort of erupting, using those, there's a growth factor associated with that, and then you compare your actual revenue received versus the calculation therein. So we didn't actually lose a lot of revenue. I think the first year was $41,000. So something like that is to give you an idea that would be eligible to be replaced. Premium pay for public sector employees, water, stormwater, and broadband infrastructure, and then administrative sort of overhead management costs. There's a premium that has been placed on water, stormwater, drainage, broadband infrastructure projects as well. So there are some explicitly ineligible uses, cannot be used to directly or indirectly offset. So you can't do tax reductions, you can't delay a tax or delay a tax increase, and you cannot deposit into trusts or pension funds to offset those sorts of costs. Joe's going to sort of take over here.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. All right, so when we became aware of the American Rescue Plan Act, Alex and I started kind of attending a lot of different webinars that provided information on this. We had discussions amongst ourselves and with the other department heads. We kind of developed a strategy here that we're proposing is to do not spend everything early. There'll be unforeseen challenges that ARPA funding can help solve in the future. Do not overthink or try to justify expenditures. Utilize ARPA funding to offset or fund needed eligible projects around town. $2.4 million is a lot of money, but it is not in a world where we spend as a municipality about $13 million a year. It's not going to change our lives, so to speak. It can do some things to help us. We want to utilize we want to utilize this, or we want to spend this money on non-recurring costs because ARPA has a deadline, and therefore, if we start to use it in our budget, we'll wind up with a bigger hit later on. We do not want to create any new programming that will require ongoing funding, and we wanted to let you know that we have engaged with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council and several other communities in the region to form a regional collaboration for consulting and reporting assistance. One of the things that ARPA can do is you can spend money from ARPA to, several larger cities are hiring ARPA managers. This was discussed internally. Given the amount of money we have and how long we have to spend it, we decided that we don't need that, but we do need some assistance with the reporting because it's very specific and it's very detail-oriented, and we have small staff. So actually, Alex tomorrow will be working with 2 other representatives from 2 of the other communities. I think there are about a dozen that have signed on with us. But Alex and a town manager from another community and somebody from MAPC will be reviewing bids to provide financial assistance and financial and reporting assistance to our kind of little collaborative effort. So that will help us with the technical aspects of reporting this grant out and making sure we dot our I's and cross our T's properly without creating any real additional expense or long-term expense. To date, we have formed an internal steering committee that consisted of myself and the finance director, public safety chiefs, the DPW director, recreation director, town clerk, and the COA consultant, because we don't have a director there right now. The idea was to have a couple working meetings to discuss what potential projects that, smaller costs that would be coming up that we would love to be able to try to take care of without impacting our budgets or our capital plans. The projects were submitted to the steering committee and rated based on an eligibility scale. Each project was independently ranked by each of the members of the steering committee and kind of got us to a roll-up of projects. Alex? This is kind of a list of what the initial project submissions were. When we totaled out what these costs would be, it was well over the $2.4 million that we had, and several of these projects are not eligible. For instance, you'll notice right in the middle of the screen that we did look at whether or not we could use any of the ARPA funds to help with the town hall project. That is not an eligible expense, so unfortunately it rated off. Alex? So what we have right now, and this is not a proposal for you to vote on to spend here this evening, this is where we are with the current project submissions. Remember, one of our goals was to not spend all of it up front. We wanted to maintain some. So this is some of the higher ranking projects that we see as being potentially funded with this funds. The process here would be to recommend these to you in some order, and then have them be reviewed by the FinCom and/or the Capital Committee. One project here at the top of this list has a high priority and a high price tag. The GAC filtration project, the pretreatment project that we have going on, has come in over budget. A lot of the reason for that, and I have Tim here to talk with you. We bid this twice now. We bid it in the spring like we planned to, and the project came in $300,000 over what we had anticipated and what we had available to spend. At that time, we only had one bid. We had posted it properly, but we only got one bid. If you remember back to the spring, a lot of companies were having trouble finding workers, and there was not a shortage of work. So therefore, nobody was interested because they didn't have enough people and they didn't have the bandwidth to take on projects. One company did, they came in overbid. We thought, well, we'll wait, we'll rebid it in the spring when everybody gets the chance to ramp up their staffs, and we'll do better. In one aspect, we did do better. We got 3 bids, and the problem was all 3 bids came in even higher. This time, we suspect and we believe that they came in higher because of the ARPA funds. Specifically, there are so many communities that have water projects to be done, and only so many contractors that actually do these projects, that all the prices gone up. There's some of it's supplies as well. Some of the materials that would be used in these kinds of projects are hard to get, or hard to get here from other countries right now. So the supply chain is an issue, but it's more the fact that it's a supply and demand market that we live in the United States, and we have a lot of demand and not very much supply. So at the same time, and if you don't mind, I'll turn it over to Tim, because I'm not asking you to make a vote tonight, but I do want you to have a good sense of the GAC filtration project. As I said, we've been working on this project for a couple of years with DEP. DEP is expecting us to move forward. There are a number of reasons we need to move forward. Our TTHMs are one aspect of it, but the coming need to conform to new PFAS standards is another aspect of it. And we don't think that by delaying for a short time that you're going to significantly see these prices come down. And if we delay for a long time, we may get in trouble with DEP. So Tim, why don't if the chair is okay with it, I'd ask Tim to address this project a little bit. You'll see it's potentially $1.4 million of the ARPA money to potentially go to the GAC filtration project.
Can I just ask a question about that? That's in addition to the $1 million that we voted for this project?
Yes.
It's 250% of that's.
The project was more than $1 million.
Yeah.
Also, Tim can give you.
Tim, why don't you provide the details on that?
Yeah, Tim Olson, DPW Director. So this has been a couple of years that we've been talking about this, and prior to, I don't know if all of you remember in detail, but we originally started with some heavy design and investigation of what type of pretreatment facility we were looking at. There was a couple different options. There was some expense there on the engineer's part to come to terms with the best system for us in regarding not only design, not only site constraints, bench testing of our raw water, and before we moved in the GAC direction, we also test drilled for Idlewood 2. The well is currently offline because it's the well that has the highest concentration of organics, which is causing these issues. So we've presently taken that well offline, and we wanted to explore to see if we could do some pilot testing to see if we can maybe find a better solution with the actual well itself and create maybe an Idlewood 2 satellite well. If we were successful and we did find a good pocket, then that might have led us not to have to do the GAC filtration system. So we wanted to try to get all that up front prior to getting into the design of the GAC. So there was a substantial engineering cost just to get to that point. All of that is all part of that money that was previously appropriated. So now we are where we are. We have bid out, and Joe did a good job of recapping where we are today. We bid it out once. We got the one bid. That's very hard to take that because we're really not sure where that stands in the competitive market. Then we bid it out a few months later, trying to set the table for next year's construction season. Got 3 bids. They are a little over budget compared to the previous bid. Variety of factors, as Joe's mentioned, but we also looked at the market, talking to some vendors, and we do not see this coming down anytime soon. We are also on the DEP's list. They know we've met with them. They've approved the project. They know we are doing some temporary measures in our system to control the levels, and they are expecting us to do a permanent solution in the short term. So they understand what we are doing. They have 100% approved the design and everything. We're ready to go. I have a contractor waiting. Right now, the media itself, the GAC media, what I've been hearing is about 40 to 44 weeks out. So this puts us into more of like a late summer, fall project if we give them the green light soon. So this is really just kind of setting the table for next year, more of a fall, hopefully before winter, but maybe finishing up in the spring of 2023 at that time. So large project, it's a heavy cost, but I think, for the system and for the residents of Hamilton, this is money well spent for the entire resident population.
So if I could, so thanks, Tim, for that roundup. I didn't want to talk just about the GAC filtration program just while we got this screen up here. You'll notice that we have some other things up here. We have earmarking about $75,000. That's for each of the 3 years of the grant, the eligibility, so potentially around $25,000 a year to handle costs of the consultants and things to make sure we do report this properly. We're carrying a budget of about $200,000 that we want to work with the boards and committees on to continue to maintain contact tracing and public health support in terms of vaccinations and booster shots and things like that. We don't have another way to manage that in our budget without raising taxes. The Asbury Grove backflow valve, that is an estimate from Tim. Tim's working on getting us a better price on that, and he's working with Asbury Grove. Asbury Grove has just closed down for the season. We want to try to have that one done this year in the off season. So the idea would be that that will probably come back to the boards in relatively short order with an actual quote so that we can bid it and get it started. And premium pay, which is a specifically called out element. We have virtually all of our municipal employees throughout the pandemic have worked in, beyond what they ever would have expected, particularly in public safety and public health, but really across the board, all of our employees have done things that they were never trained to do, that they've could never have imagined they'd be asked to do. ARPA does allow for us to recognize that. We're not viewing this in terms of, permanent changes to wages. We're viewing it in terms of, premium payments, potentially. We'd want the input of the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom on that. And then a couple of other projects that are there, or programs that are thought we could, again, there is specific call out in ARPA for supporting local businesses trying to recover from the pandemic. Particularly shopping and restaurant businesses were injured, were harmed in the pandemic, and they may need some assistance. We'd like to see if it's feasible to work with the HDC to target some small amount of aid. That $300,000 number there is can be discussed and adjusted. Obviously, if we fund all of these things, it wouldn't we wouldn't have enough with the $2.4 million. So some of these things will change. Hopefully, the Asbury Grove number comes down a little bit. Hopefully, we can get some better handle on what we might be able to do. And then we're still open to other projects, and we may want to hold off on some of the stuff so that we have money to spend in years 2 and 3. So again, not looking for a vote tonight. I am anticipating bringing you a request for a vote, particularly on the GAC filtration at the next meeting, because we've got the bidder, the low bidder has agreed to hold his price to December 20th. So if we want to do that, we need it to be reviewed by FinCom and Capcom in pretty short order and make a decision at the next meeting.
So do we have just one bidder for the GAC filtration?
We had three. The low bidder has agreed to hold his price to the 20th, which is, by the way, almost a month longer than he has to.
Right. And what was the range on the 3 bidders?
Tim?
Low bid was just over 3 million. High bid was 3.6.
That's, oh my God.
So
And Joe, the other item there that I don't think you mentioned, is that, like, tough to remember, Bridge Street, Miles River drainage, is that what that's?
Yeah, Tim, this is another project that was proposed by Tim. It does rate very well in terms of being qualified as a use of ARPA funds. Tim, do you want to explain this project? And the $600,000 is an estimated cost and is a placeholder right now. We don't think we have a real, hasn't been bid yet, so we don't have a real cost.
Is that
Yeah,
where?
so those are two just different areas in town that we have some drainage problems. Bridge Street from Bay Road to the Miles River Culvert. I wanted to do some drainage work there with the follow of a repave. And then Miles River as well, we have some really some issues there with icing and some drainage, lack of drainage. So we've designed it. We actually did bid it. We didn't award it just due to cost and my current budget allows. So that's kind of, it would have to be rebid, but that's probably a pretty good estimate. Possibly less depending on the the market, but that's probably pretty close to where it would be.
Or possibly 100% more.
Tim,
Never know.
Tim, does this work have anything to do with the new development? I know people have mentioned concerns about the stormwater drainage in that area because it's on ledge. I know that the two parcels that are being developed are on the periphery of that, and they're pretty low. But I'm wondering, is this work in anticipation of increased needs because of this new development on
So
Bridge Street?
Bridge Street, this is the section between Bay Road and the Miles River Culvert. So that's not adjacent to that development. The Miles River drainage is, right on the Miles River side, it's two driveways and obviously some development of two lots there. We were planning just to make some drainage improvements. I believe that the drainage improvements that we were planning to make prior to that development would be satisfactory, even with that development being constructed.
Okay, so you're saying that the development has no impact on the work that you would like to do on the Miles River Bridge Street portion?
That's correct.
Okay.
This project was designed and bid prior, but looking at what their plans are, I don't see any major impacts to what I had originally decided on designing.
That's the last one.
Okay, thank you.
So if you don't mind, we could take this down. You can take down the share screen. So at this point, we wanted to present to you kind of, the background of what ARPA is, what it can do, what it can't do, what work we've done so far to kind of get things ready for the board to consider. Obviously, we're at the beginning of that process, and the process includes, review by the FinCom, and in the case of capital projects, potentially the capital committee. That process always starts with a presentation of the Board of Selectmen. You've got your initial presentation. Happy to answer questions if you have any. I will tell you that I'm probably going to, as I said, have something for you to look at the next meeting. It may potentially involve both the backflow valve protection and as well as the GAC filtration project. And I might ask for a blanket approval to earmark X thousands of dollars for continued response to the pandemic in our public health departments. So.
FinCom will be weighing in,
Yeah.
and Capcom will be weighing in.
Yep,
And
that's part of the process.
Yep.
Exactly, yep.
so when will we hear from them?
Well, we initiate these processes with the Board of Selectmen, so now that we've done this, and we did invite the FinCom and Capcom members to participate tonight. Some of them are on Zoom. I think some of them may actually even also be at home just watching on HW camera or YouTube. We'll send this presentation to them next, and as soon as they can meet about it and review it, we'll get their input.
So there was two lists I saw, maybe Alex, you can go back to them, but there was a long laundry list, and then you got sort of the short list that added up to like 2.7.
Yeah, the longer list was stuff
Is there anything is there anything that in the longer list that did make that you want us to sort of review as an option?
Yeah, can you pull that up? So one of the good things about this was it did give us, as a group, the department heads and Alex and myself, an idea, a way of looking at some additional things of what could we do. So for instance, you'll see that one of the recommendations from the COA was a needs assessment for seniors. So we determined that it was an ineligible expense for ARPA funds, but that it was something that needed to be done. And where we had kind of not used some of the COA budget this year because we didn't have any staff really until September, and we don't have a full-time director yet. We're going to take some savings from this year's budget, repurpose it in a line item transfer within the department, and we've hired the Gerontology Institute at UMass Boston to begin that needs assessment. So we've done that. There was a public cameras for Patton Park and Patton Homestead. Chief Stevens, seeing that was going to be an ineligible expense, but also a necessary project, has gone out and gotten us a grant to begin that project. I don't think it'll be necessarily as far-reaching as we had talked about with the $50,000, but I know he got some grants money from Maya, and we're going to be starting that work soon. We've already signed the grant documents to receive that as grant. So we'll continue to look at this list of things and see if there are things that we can handle in other ways. Some of those things may come back in the budget process and be proposals to be either added to the capital committee or to capital plan, or be looked at for other projects. Some of them may be grant eligible for other grants that don't include ARPA funds. So
is the fuel facility, is that?
Fuel facility is an ineligible expense.
Okay.
There's one of my favorite ones that was recommended here was the bocce recreation outdoor seating for the COA. An ineligible expense, but certainly one that if there's an enterprising Eagle Scout out there that wants to try to figure out how to build a bocce court for our seniors, we'd definitely bring that before the Board of Selectmen for review sometime next spring. Because I think the construction season for that's running out now, but just throw it out there.
Yeah, and those kids are so talented.
They've done
Holy
some great stuff.
mackerel! I saw the raised
Raised plant
planters.
boxes and a new
Oh
door.
my gosh!
Big painting job on the door that looks so much nicer, more about inviting than it did as just a gray, government gray paint door.
And there's also perhaps a mural to come in the spring. These kids they're just amazing.
So we'll continue. That internal committee's kind of completed most of its work for now. As other things present themselves, if the other things come up that we need to respond to, we'll bring those to the board. But we'll continue to work as a group on this list and find other ways to try to fund some of the stuff.
Yeah.
And then the process, just so I understand the process. So every dollar that gets spent will come in front of the board before it gets spent for approval, correct? That's the process?
Yes, except that as I said,
Buckets of money. Are we're going to put buckets of money?
I might ask you to put aside, earmark a couple $100,000 for contact tracing, vaccination, other pandemic public health related efforts, so that we can continue to meet those needs. We had been funding that with CARES Act money. The CARES Act money is now no longer available to us, so we'd ask for the flexibility on that.
Right, and some of those things that we're looking at, like specifically the one you just mentioned, we're not going to have a set concrete number or a bid on it. It's just whatever we spend. So if we ballpark it, that's all we can really do with it.
But yeah, ballpark it, but assign it a cost. That stays within inside that cost. Okay.
Yep.
And then like Darcy said, so these things you're gonna make a recommendation to us, and then we're gonna say
And we send them to FinCom. With the capital items, the Capcom also, but not the non-capital items, we just go to
Because
FinCom.
December 20th is only. We have 2 meetings to vote on that.
Yep.
So we got to do some hard work in the next 2 meetings.
So
Fortunately, that project has been pretty well vetted by the FinCom and the Capcom and yourselves already. It's really a matter of discussing whether you feel this is a prudent use of the ARPA funds at this time.
Yep.
And because I think that all 3 boards have supported that project already. We've already moved it on into this phase that it's in. We've already appropriated money from town meeting. So it's really just a matter of determining if the overage can be handled with the ARPA funds.
If we didn't get ARPA funding, what would we have done?
that's
Probably go back to town meeting. And,
There probably would have been a couple of options. We could have put it on the water rate, which is not a great option, or borrow it.
well, we've already put a lot of debt onto the water rate, so I wouldn't have wanted to put another
It's a pretty big number
It is a big number, yeah.
huge. It's huge. Shocking.
This is our kind of golden ticket opportunity here, I think, with the ARPA money and this need for the water treatment plant. for it already.
Yep.
Oh.
To be done, it's just too bad that it's $1 million or whatever.
$1.5 million over it, that is just.
Well, I think he said some of it was gonna be there anyways, because it's a little bit more work, but
Right,
it's
right.
still at the Delta.
Yeah.
So, all right, I would like to see you, fast track the discussion on the water, so we don't miss the next.
It will be on your next meeting, and we'll make sure that the FinCom and Capcom know of it. I know both chairs are listening right now,
Good.
so I don't know if they want to be
I
recognized.
think Jamie and Rosie.
Do you want to take
Yeah.
this? Do you want to take the screen down? So we can see if everybody has it?
Actually, you can leave that up. So,
Oh, sorry.
that's all right. I just had a question about the backflow valve over at Asbury Grove. Are we footing the bill for all of that? I thought that they were going to contribute something toward that.
We can negotiate that with them. The fact of the matter is the backflow, and Tim can break him, because Tim and I have gone back and forth on this. Part of the problem, though, is that the backflow valve is to protect our system.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything for them.
It was the meter. What they were gonna pay for was the
Meter,
was the
yeah,
metering,
upgrading the meter, yeah.
not the backflow.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
so,
Okay.
okay. Jamie?
If there's a quick answer to this, great. If it's not, we can do it offline or whatever. But so is the water tank at the Gordon Conwell property, the town property adjacent? Is that that's not a high priority thing?
Well,
Is that?
I mean, Tim, you wanna take this one on? It's,
You're asking me to have a quick answer? I don't know if
yeah,
that's gonna happen.
yeah.
No.
But tell
That's
us.
not just,
3 minutes.
The issue is
good question, Jamie.
it's been
We
identified
had
as a
our-
long-term
I think it was
issue.
back in September last year, or 2020, I think we had the inspection. Everything looked pretty good. There were some minor things that we need to make some repairs. Nothing is cheap and inexpensive, but the tank itself as a whole is in pretty good shape considering age. But anything to replace that is obviously that's going to be a large project that we've talked to the Capcom about, and have it on the 5-year plan as it kind of keeps moving forward. But I do plan to have that tank inspected and cleaned yearly from this point forward.
Okay.
So I think the short answer is that there's not an immediate need to do anything with the tank. It's an older tank, and the way it was constructed is a little bit different. It doesn't really give us the opportunity to really kind of keep the water moving. But it is also such a large expense, even before COVID, even before ARPA, that we really were struggling with how we would be able to take it on in the next couple of years. Unfortunately, the estimate for what that would be pre-COVID and pre-ARPA was quite high, and I can't imagine that in this environment we'd get that price any lower. That our ARPA, all of our ARPA funds wouldn't cover that expense.
Okay.
So that's why we continue to look for other ways to provide water to our residents, including, regional efforts and the likes of, we're involved with the North Shore Water Resiliency Task Force that Senator Tarr has set up, and we've got a grant into the state to try to study other potential long-term solutions to our water resiliency problem, which would, if successful, negate the need to upgrade that water tank in the future.
So I'll just make
Can I
a
say something? This is Nick Tenson. I don't know if I can speak or not.
Please, of course.
Yeah, Nick, go ahead. Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm wondering about the infrastructure bill that was just passed, and I know it's premature to say we could get something, but there may be some opportunity at that point to look at water infrastructure, because I think that's a big part of the infrastructure bill, and maybe we can't do it now, but we could look at that as a future expenditure through that program.
It's a good idea. Yeah, it was just fine. So I will just make the comment that certainly we have a lot of water needs, a lot of DPW/water needs. I just want to make sure that Capcom has a really good chance to weigh in on this, because I know, I don't recall our 5-year plan from the Capcom right on the tip of my tongue, but I know that there were some pretty high priority items on that. And I just want to make sure that we look carefully at all of our needs and disperse the money accordingly.
Agreed.
Sounds good.
Okay.
That's it
If
for
I-
me.
Could I just respond to Mr. Tenson? So we'll definitely be looking at what ever guidance comes out from the state and federal government with regard to the new infrastructure bill that was just signed into law, I think, hours ago. Unfortunately, it'll probably be a couple of weeks before we have initial guidance from the federal and state governments. But we will definitely be looking at ways to plug into that, so.
Okay.
That's all we have for ARPA discussion tonight.
All right, thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah,
Summary.
thank you.
All right, and then, Doris, if you want to lead our discussion. So the last thing on our agenda is the summary unconscious bias workshop training. So as it's late in the evening, what I was hoping to do is break this discussion into two things. Tonight, I want to talk about sort of the summary of what we've done to date, take that all in, and the next time we come and talk, we can talk about what we're going to do with it what the next steps are. So today was just sort of talk about what we did. We can all go home, digest it, I'll think about it, and then next time come back, it's okay, now what do we want to do with it? What do we want to do next with it? That's my thought. So that's why it says summary of unconscious, not
Well,
planning.
what we did was we met and we went through the training. We had facilitators that guided us through, actually kind of like an imagery, so that you could imagine certain scenarios. And we also each spoke about what we thought, of the training as it was occurring, and had some good discussions. And then we had a lunch, and then afterwards there was a little bit of a debrief while we were there. But I think what we learned was that we really do need to learn to work together in a much more cohesive, collaborative way. And I was talking with Michelle Lee, our human resources professional, and she suggested that we could use this training for other committees, boards, and other groups, department heads perhaps. And then I know the facilitators also said we have a communication issue. There's a serious communication issue on the board that we need to address. So that would be, I know I'm jumping ahead, but that would be the second module that we would need to have, because that would help us, it would just help us become a better team, more connected, that kind of thing.
I agree. I think that team building and trust.
Yes,
and
trust.
It all goes hand in hand, right? You need to trust that you're going to be listened to and understood and heard, and that's going to make you share better and then learn more and work together better. So I think that whatever we can do to become a better team is going to help. And I think we have. I think most things we vote on now are unanimous, and that's not by coincidence.
It
That's
takes
by
work
that's by
to
hard
do
work,
that,
right? Yes.
but you're right, that's
Right.
the goal, isn't it?
That is
Yeah.
the goal. Build consensus and be unanimous on our decisions, even though we come from all different backgrounds and all different thoughts and all different goals. We see a common goal of what this town needs to have, and we try to get to that goal. So I think that we put our individual needs aside and think about what's best for the town. So I think to be a team is good. So
Perfect.
I think it was a good training. It was eye-opening to us, as we heard. I think she said that the woman who said we have 7 million sort of per second, 7 million things, sensories in our, whether we see, hear, smell, and then we have to react to all those, and how many can we react to at one time? And so it's sort of
One
learning.
thing that I learned, and it just really stuck with me, was that in this journey that we all have toward diversity, equity, and inclusion, not all of us are going to be on the same place on that path, and you have to respect people wherever they live. on that path as they're making their journey toward diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that's really a beautiful way of thinking about it. And I would like to see us practice that. Just because somebody has a slightly different version of how they approach a problem doesn't mean we should be vilifying them, because we're all basically working toward the same thing. So I would like to see more collaboration and respect for people who have different opinions on various subjects.
Agreed. Jamie, anything else to add?
I ju-
Summary what we did?
No, I just had a specific question. So we had the debrief that Darcy and Joe and I were on after them, and then I thought that diversity at workplace was going to provide something in writing to us.
Oh.
Have they done that yet?
I haven't received it yet, but we can follow up with them and find out if they have it for us.
Which was, I mean, I think it was going to contain sort of at least their
Recommendations.
some recommendations
Yeah,
for
yeah.
like
Right. I
how
think
we
that's
should
good.
go
Hopefully we
forward.
can get it before next meeting and
I'll
we can
give
talk
Stella
about it.
a email.
Sean?
I guess, and to Jamie's kind of comment there, I wasn't able to make the debrief, but could you summarize it a little bit, the folks that were there maybe? Just so I can get an idea of what it was.
I think we realized that there is work to do. We have work to do. I think that's basically what I took
Gotcha.
away from it. was
Always
that
room for improvement,
There's
right?
always room for improvement.
All right.
That's right, yeah.
That's a good
Yeah, I
summary.
think, I mean, at least what I remember is there are going to be some recommendations that are specifically about us.
Right.
But then also about other boards and committees and employees and things as well, sort of thinking towards that.
Right, and I think that's kind of part of our vision, and Darcy, when you started this whole thing, was it wasn't just for us. I mean, we were a major benefactor of it, but I think all of us felt that it was something that should be more holistically throughout boards and committees in town, and whatever we can do to help facilitate that, I think will help all those boards and committees communicate and understand each other.
And I think doing it in person was much more productive than doing it on Zoom.
Yes,
so
I'm
too.
glad we kind of pushed for that.
Yeah.
I think that makes a
agree.
big difference.
Yes.
Duke?
Why don't you just make a list of your accomplishments also,
Good idea.
what you've done good for the town?
It's not a bad idea. I mean, I guess we can.
A lot of things that people don't know about, and accomplishments mean a lot, I think.
We typically, it's a good point, and Sean's done a good job in the past. We're typically at town meetings, we typically go through the list, but we've tried to keep town meetings short.
I
Right.
know.
So we don't do that list, but we usually have a pretty good list of all the stuff that we've accomplished, and I think we should, that's a great idea, Duke, we should go back to that.
Yeah.
But we have, because we sort of put that on hiatus to sort of to make town meetings shorter because of the
I
pandemic.
can't
so-
grandstand anymore, I guess.
Yeah.
Sure you can, anytime.
Speaking of town meeting, I will note that an allowable use of ARPA is not to rent a tent for town meeting, so. I'm
We're
hoping
going
we can-
back
I'm
inside.
I'm hoping we can all agree to go back inside.
Yeah.
That would be
I
preferable.
didn't mean to bring it up at town meeting. You put it out there somewhere.
Yeah, thanks, Duke. That's a good idea. The town historically doesn't do a good enough job communicating with the people what we are doing. We're just kind of always in read and react mode, so we need to be more proactive about telling our story, so.
Rose, anything else to add to our summary of our unconscious bias training?
Well, just a thought that I had. I think the board has really come a long way in working collectively, in being flexible, and in understanding a common goal instead of our own biases or our own particular views. And I think that's a real strength that this board has developed, and I took note of that during that training. I was pretty happy that we really have come a long way, and we even came that distance without specific training. So I'm very grateful to be part of a board that has really grown so much, and I think that that we really do think of best interest of the town, and we're not thinking about individual needs, because everybody has an individual need in one thing or another, but certainly understanding other people's perspective, while at the same time thinking that we represent a whole town and not just some people in it. So I think that's what I took from that.
Oh, that's good. Thank you, thank you for sharing. All right, anything else?
Darcy.
Shall I make a motion?
Sure.
I move that we adjourn the evening.
Have a second?
Second.
From Rosie. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good meeting, everybody. Good job. We had a lot to go over. We did it.
Thank you for sharing.